Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Radio1WorldFestGlobal, Sunday, February 25th, 6 p.m. Broadcasting live out of We Say What They Can't studios right here in Brooklyn, New York City. You know, we coming to y'all live the last Sunday of every month, Radio1WorldFestGlobal, right here from We Say What They Can't studios. And we like to bring y'all a show that deals with issues that are global in impact, global in scope, local in impact. This month, for Black History Month, we're bringing you a show celebrating the diversity that exists in the African, American, Caribbean, and Latino diaspora. What do I mean by that? We know that the first man and woman was born in Africa, and they spawned seeds that traveled the world, that ended up in all parts of the world, whether we liked it or not, huh? The beautiful thing about it is that as a result of that, we got to be in different environments. We got to be inspired, and we got to be touched by different things that environment produced in us that made us kind of look different, sound different, talk different, eat different, and therefore think different. And we talk and learn different languages as a result of that as well. One World Fest Global, of course, our mission is to provide a platform where people of all different ethnicities can come together and celebrate their culture and show appreciation for other people's cultures. Today we get to show appreciation for the diversity that exists in Black culture. So without further ado, my name is Kamel Ellis. For those of y'all watching on y'all know what it is, on my Facebook Live. And I'm going to introduce my co-hosts and guests and let them say peace, and then we're going to really get this popping. My first co-host, of course, is the great and beautiful and African Miss Nefertiria Jones of One World Fest Global. Peace, Nefertiria. How you doing this afternoon, sister?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening in.
My next person down to my very right is Mr. Alfred OBS. You just say peace to him, Alfred.
Hey everybody, how you guys doing tonight?
All right. Next to him is our special co-host for the day, One World Fest Global Advisory Board member, Mr. Malachi Davis.
What's going on, everybody?
All right, thank you, Malachi. Next to Malachi is Miss Jemima Francois. Say hi to him, sis. Say hi to our audience.
Peace, assalamu alaikum, bonsoir.
Thank you for that, Jemima. And next to Jemima, on the way on the other end of me, completing our panel and making this a real full house today is Miss Gigi Casanova. How you doing, Gigi?
Hey, everybody. Hi.
Thank you, Miss Beautiful Gigi Casanova. So we looking real diverse in here today. I'm very excited about this panel. And, with One World Fest Global, we promote diversity, tolerance, and inclusion, right? So for Black History Month, we said, hey, that's great and beautiful, but our people, our Black people, we are a very diverse group amongst ourselves. And we're going to celebrate that today for Black History Month. We're going to celebrate the diversity that exists in our community. So what we wanted to do was bring in people from across the diaspora and have them speak to their experience growing up from being such diverse backgrounds that our people produce from leaving the continent. We were the first explorers by boat, of course by foot, and traveling across the other 6 continents, 7 in total. So let's get into it. For instance, my background is Crucian. My father was born in St. Croix, as am I, and my mother is from Georgia. All right, so we used to say to my mother, like, where'd you meet this cat at, right? He's from St. Croix, the Virgin Islands, and you're from South Georgia, 3 hours south of Atlanta, a small town called Moultrie, Georgia. Well, turns out that my parents met, like a lot of Black folks did back in the 50s and 60s, in Harlem. You know what I'm saying? They met in Harlem, where folks had come and settled from South and from the islands, and they got together there and dated and kicked it. My pops was walking the beat up there, And my mother used to work in the cleaners that my uncle owned on 116th Street. And that's how they met. And after a while, they ended up going to, they had some kids here, ended up going to St. Croix and had a couple of more, including myself, and then moved back. It wasn't as fly back in the 60s as we know the Caribbean to be these days. So mom's like, that was a little nervous. We had to bring it on back. But in the interim, we got touched by that cruising culture. Of course, my people got touched by cruising culture, West Indian culture. Now, St. Croix was is a colony, a commonwealth, as they call it, that was brought from the Dutch by America. Nevertheless, and there were also some Indian tribes down there. But the thing is that what they always taught us, coming from St. Croix, was to be proud of our West Indian, what they call it, heritage. That means that, enjoy this food that we have, enjoy the fact that we come, that triangular trade moved around and it touched us here, but we're imparting some principles upon you that are really important. Those principles were family comes first. Those principles were you always make sure you respect your elderly, respect your parents, respect people that are older than you, not just your mother and father, but respect your aunts, respect your uncles, respect your teachers. You don't talk back to older people. We were taught to always look out for your brothers and sisters and people that were younger than you, and also to make sure that whatever you did, you represented your family right whenever you left the house. You represent this family. My mother and father used to tell, make sure, our last name is Ellis. We work hard. You make sure that you represent us properly when you leave this house. If you don't, there's going to be a problem. So, these things I carry forward with me now, and we're going to, talk to some of our panelists, and we're going to ask them where they're from, and we're going to ask them a little bit about themselves and their backgrounds. We'll come back to me because we got an hour today, and I could be here all day. So first, Nefertiti, tell me, my sister, let's talk a little bit about in the diaspora where you and your family's from and those things that you were taught by your grandparents and parents and why they were important to you and how you need to bring them forth.
Well, I'm really blessed to have my grandmother alive, 88 years old. Shout out to Ophelia Sanders. And my grandfather's actually one of 23 children. That's the Sanders right there. Well, the history my grandmother taught me, and this is my father's side, so I'm really blessed to have knowledge about my father's side and my mother's side, going back to histories. And my grandmother's father was a sharecropper. And if anyone know about sharecropping at that time, you were able to farm and work on the land, but you could not really eat or sell off of your land. So years ago, they actually had a law where they gave sharecroppers some land. And my great-grandfather actually purchased more land, and it accumulated about almost 200 acres of land, which is still in the family to this day. On my mother's side, her father, grandparents, great-grandparents on their side, and they're both South Carolina. Both my family lands go through counties. So my mother's side of the family, we have same thing, story of sharecroppers, and we have about 150 acres of land. So when we go down south, when I was a kid, they actually had the plantation house that was still on the land, and they had chains, they had all, and at that time I didn't understand how close or how I wasn't that far removed from slavery. Only 4 generations removed from slavery.
Wow.
And so the knowledge was still there. I always talk that I had a red tone, so we did know we had some Irish in our family. My grandmother's mother, my grandmother was a product of rape from an Irishman, and she was of that product. So a lot of her kids are light skinned, red bone, even though I have a brown skin, I have a red undertone towards me. And I guess that comes from the Irish that comes in. But in actuality, Ireland, they were identified as indigenous group, not indigenous group, ethnic group. And they classified Irishmen, some Dutch as not African American, but they knew they had black blood in them.
You know what they call the Irish?
Yeah.
N-words, Europe, right?
Yeah, they actually call Irish the N-words.
I mean, they were always
not only
used
Irish,
as
Italians as well.
Overseers and stuff like that on the plantations because they usually came here as indentured servants during that time anyway to the English, and even going back before that, they were exploited very much.
And before I pass it on to my esteemed panelists, I just want to say that in my history books, they said that they had white people as slaves in America, and they couldn't work the field because it was too hot, and they couldn't stand the sun. So that was their reason to go. But I'm gonna head to actually go to Africa and bring more slaves up.
That's
so
peace.
actually, we were not the first slaves in America. We really want to go back to history. But I want to pass it over to Malik, who is our Malachi. Pass it over to Malachi, who is our co-host for today.
How's it going, everybody?
Peace, Malachi.
What's going on, y'all? I actually have a story background. My mother's side, she's Puerto Rican and black. So my great-grandfather came to New York at a time where, you kind of stayed within your culture. You didn't really date outside your race. And my great-grandfather being of Puerto Rican descent, being in the Bronx, marrying my grandmother who was African-American, it wasn't really accepted. So he really stepped out on a limb with that one and kind of exuded bravery because it wasn't really accepted. His parents, even in, every culture, black, Hispanic, lighter skin is usually like, they're better than you. And, my grandmother wasn't a fair-skinned woman. My grandfather happened to be a very fair-skinned Puerto Rican. So, they caught a lot of flack for that. And they ended up having 6 children, my grandfather being the oldest. And he had my mom with an African-American woman. And, I kind of grew up with the same type of values as my Uncle Kamal as far as just being taught, to respect your elders and little things like that, eating at the table. A lot of people take those things for granted, having dinner with your whole family, sitting down. A lot of people, they allow their kids to eat in the room and stuff like that. With us, it was always be at the table. This is family time. Put your phone away. This is our time to really just recollect and respect each other. And, that I really embodied that and that resonated with me. And me being a new father, I want to instill those things in my own daughter.
Right, I was going to ask you about that because Malachi just recently had a daughter within the last, how old is Ava Rain now? What,
She's actually 3 weeks. Yep, 3 weeks.
Exactly. Congratulations to him on that and how you were going to impart those things to her,
Absolutely.
I'm sure, right?
Most definitely. And on my father's side, both of my grandparents, they're from Jamaica. My grandfather being from St. Thomas and my grandmother being from Kingston, actually, Spanish Town. And I pretty much learned the same things from her. My grandmother's actually 95. So talking to my grandmother is a can of wisdom, and she's able to tell me what it was like in so many different generations, and her coming from the island and coming to New York in the 20s and experiencing the Harlem Renaissance and then the Civil Rights Movement and things like that. So my upbringing from her is more well-rounded than just what she learned in Jamaica. It's more about the respect and taking what our ancestors came here and did for us and running with it. For her to be 95, she's seen it all.
Exactly, yeah. And she's a beautiful woman and still very much alive and doing well. And so we're blessed to have her here and to have her impart those pearls of wisdom on us even to this day and how we need to take it forward. That's peace.
Absolutely. So I'm going to pass it to my sister to the right of me. She's of Haitian descent, am I right?
Yes.
And please just walk us through that and tell us, some of the things that was instilled in you and what you still bring to the forefront today.
Well,
It's Jemima Francois.
yes. Good evening, bonsoir, buenas noches. I'm from Haiti. I came here when I was 10 years old. At a young age, I was raised by my grandmother. My grandfather is of African descent from Cuba. So I basically had the same values. Coming from the Caribbean, you have certain values, but one of the things as a Haitian woman, they instilled in me of what it was like, how we were the first independent country. They instilled, that was very important as far as,
Hemisphere.
yeah, that was like very important. So
Western Hemisphere.
they're very proud. Haitian people are very proud people, hard workers. So it was very, we did have to get together and sit with the family.
Okay.
And so on and so forth. Yeah, we had to sit for
That was
dinner.
important, right?
That was very important,
Right.
And I came here as a child and 10 years old, and but so I embraced the Black American culture,
Right.
and to interact that with my Haitian culture. My children's father actually, he's African American. And so, but I never forgot where we came from, where I
Okay.
came from. I embrace my African heritage, very
Okay.
much so.
Nice.
While the children were young, I took them to Haiti because I wanted them to see where they came from.
Right.
And it's just very important. I know that Haitians always get a lot of flack, so I was always into educating people
Okay.
about Haiti because the
That's
only
interesting.
thing that people know, because my mother taught it to me, my grandmother taught it to me, so
what
that
were
was
some of
very
the
important.
What were some of the misconceptions that you found that you had to deal with coming here as a child from Haiti at 10 years old? What were some of the misconceptions that you had to deal with in terms of what people thought of Haitian people and that, you know what I mean? That you had to overcome?
Some of the misconceptions were they said that if you were black, because Haiti, it wasn't about color or anything like that, it was about class, but if you were dark skinned, such as myself, they considered us miseducated. They said that we did not know how to read. We were basically considered as illiterate people, which is false because I'm from my parents, all the way back to my grandparents and my great-grandparents, all of them are educators. We had schools in Haiti that my family started and so on and so forth. So I guess you would say it was the miseducation of the culture of the country itself, always viewed as, it's all poverty. Yes, there is poverty there, but
Okay.
Haiti is actually a beautiful island. They don't show you whether Europeans are coming and other people are coming to vacation in Haiti.
Okay.
They're not showing you about Jacmel. They're not telling you about Cap Haitien. They're not telling you about these places. They just,
different places in Haiti?
yes, different provinces.
Okay. Where
So-
tourism thrives and things of that nature?
Yeah, I would say that it is not commercialized,
Okay.
Yeah, but it's really a beautiful country.
Right.
Unfortunately, certain things have happened. We had to deal with misconception where people are saying because we made a pact with the devil and that's the reason all these horrible things are happening in Haiti. I found it amazing when African people revolted against slavery, and I found it like it's funny that they are saying that it's a pact with the devil. It was not a pact with the devil. It's just that we, the people that were there, the people like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, people like Toussaint Louverture, people like people they're not telling us about, and they fought against being enslaved, and that's all it was because we got tired of it and we were gonna do something about it.
And they demonized Haiti because
Yeah.
of you guys' independence.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
of
really.
course, they had to say you made a pact with the devil because they didn't want the rest of the world to fight for their liberation.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
if
yeah.
they demonize a certain group in a certain country, then it's okay. Nobody else will want to fight against us. It's funny how they talk about Haiti and being so bad, but Haiti pays $40 billion a year in taxes to France.
Yeah, it's just, but I always tell people right now, I know, I think in 2017, Tariq Nasheed, he did that's one of the things that I'm loving about the whole One World Fest, that we're coming together and we're learning from each other. But one of the things that I tell people of all nations to try to see if they could study that movie 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti, because it's actually a great documentary.
Okay. Cool. Thank you very much for that, Jemima. Let's go down to the other end now and let's talk to Miss Gigi Casanova and see, Gigi, if you can tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from and your parents and things of that nature, those principles that were instilled upon you as well.
My name is Gigi Casanova. My parents are both from Cuba, from Havana. They were able to come here before the revolution legally as kids. So they were brought over with my grandparents, who were very hard workers here in the healthcare field. So my parents got married here pretty young. They worked. My dad was a baseball player out in Cuba, and my mom became a model here. So somehow they met. It's a long story. They had a big bash. They got married in the Bronx, and I came along. And After that, my father got into the entertainment field, and he stuck with that. They were married really young, like 19, 20, which is pretty young.
Right. But that was actually quite common back then, though.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
was
folks got
common.
married really young back then. You know?
Yep.
It's quite common.
It was very strict in
Right.
my culture, and they just believed in marriage
Right.
before
You
anything.
ain't just coming through here and dating my daughter, and you know what I mean, you gonna marry my daughter.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was on like that. You know, when we was 19, 20 years old.
Exactly.
That's how people did it. You know,
It was done.
you had to grow up fast.
Yep. And
You know, mature
unfortunately,
fast.
they were young, and it didn't last for long. Sometimes couples back in that era, they were forced to be
True
together,
that.
no matter what.
Yeah.
But I guess my parents were going into the 70s, so during that time it was okay, I guess, to get a divorce. And eventually they divorced as I was a kid, and I was basically raised here. I was born in Lenox Hill Hospital. My whole family worked there.
Wow.
And I used to hang out in the hospital all the time, so that's how I ended up getting into nursing, because I would hang out in the hospitals, run through up and down the hospitals, and they worked hard and everything, and they got me into that field. And what I went through growing up was being a black child with a nappy head that spoke Spanish. I went through a lot of racism within my own people, actually, because a lot of my black friends thought I was black. Then a lot of my Spanish friends thought I was black, but they knew that my parents spoke Spanish, because then we have the Spanish Caribbean thing where there's the light and the dark.
Right. Yeah, that's an issue. That continues to be an issue, I think.
Still, until this day,
Right.
we always have that conversation
Amongst us too, there was that self-hate taught, and
within
it was
our
very
own.
ingrained.
Within our own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was raised with the whites with blue eyes, dark skin with green eyes. I was brought up with a non-racial divide in my family. I didn't learn that. I didn't learn racism until we once moved to Massachusetts, and I helped a little child out, and the child happened to be white, and the parent was like, okay, thanks for bringing my child here. Now get out of here, because you're going to get hurt. And then I went home and told my mother this, and she was like, oh, don't worry about it. And then from then on, I was about 7. I remember helping a little white child. And after that, I learned. It was right there in front of my eyes forever.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Those things that happen to us when we're young like that, they definitely affect us.
traumatized.
Right. and we start to learn those negative parts of human behavior
Right.
that don't have anything to do with us until now it gets ingrained, because we're seeing how it affects us just coming from other people, and it's sad, and then the real sad part is, like you said, when we start to let it affect how we view each other.
Right.
And those negative images that we cast upon each other, and then we hurt people. But our people are going through a lot of, post-traumatic slave syndrome. We're not going to get into that
Exactly.
today.
We can't get into that. This is a celebration.
This is a celebration.
But I went home and told Mom about that, and she was like, "Don't worry about it." And being in my family was very hardworking, all that. So was I, and everything. We just kept it pushing, and as life went on, I saw more and more of it, and I was like, "Wow, why didn't I see this within us growing up?" Because we come in all colors, the Cubans.
Right.
I also went through you don't look Cuban. I said, well, how does a Cuban look? Like, what you're saying to me is not really making sense. And I go through that to this day from other Hispanics, like Caribbean and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of work to be done, but we've come a long way.
Definitely
We're doing good.
Definitely that. And, this is great. We do an hour show here at Radio 1 World Fest Global. And as you guys well know, we have other co-hosts that sit here usually with Nefertari and I, and we're doing something real different with our format today. And we like breaking this thing up in twos, because I want them to come on as well, our co-hosts, because they have stories to tell. We still have our friend here, Alfred, our guest, to talk about his background, and he's going to talk about it when our co-hosts come on. It's Mr. Ruel Burford and Lisa Ray from the One World team, and they're going to talk to our guests here about, again, celebrating this African diaspora. I think they want to talk about some fictional African diaspora in Wakanda and all that good stuff. So we're just gonna take a quick pause for the cause. We're gonna switch out, and I got some other people I want y'all to meet, and I'm sure our regular listeners to Radio 1 World Fest Global have heard them before. It's Lisa Ray and Ruel Burford, and we're gonna bring them on right now and finish this discussion for the next half hour.
So all guys that are live looking on live stream on Facebook, just stay tuned in. We're just gonna do a switch, and my co-host is gonna come on. So those of you that are seeing via my page, we're still here.
And thank you guys for rocking out with us. It's been a great show, and we just want to thank everybody that's tuned in on Facebook, who's tuned in on the website. Yes. We really appreciate it, man. We're here pumping, unity amongst all races, and we're just glad everyone's tuned in. Absolutely. It's a beautiful show, y'all. We hope y'all are enjoying. Stay in the comment box. Keep letting us know what you think. Content, whatever it may be.
Tune in, everybody.
All right, we're back, or I'm here now. Once again, welcome to Radio 1 World Fest Global, brought to you by 1 World Fest Global. My name is Lisa Ray. I've been away for a minute, but I'm here today. And I actually share your background, Malachi, because my mom is Puerto Rican. Yeah. My father was from the South. My grandfather was Jamaican. So my last name is Ray. It's really W-R-A-Y. Okay. Not R-A-Y. Oh, so wow. I'm going to let Ruel say a few things. And we just want this to flow a little bit more. Yeah. The between Ruel and Malachi, we'd like you to definitely come out with the questions, especially you being the younger person here, because we want to relate to some of the things that you're going through and some of the things that you've seen in comparison to us. And then we're going to get Mr. Alfred on.
Okay. Yeah, good evening all. What we're going to do is probably just go, as Lisa said, to what we're going to call a lightning round or round, and direct the questions to specific people, and they just hit like that. And so Malachi, we're going to let you take the lead. I'll just ask one quick question to Brother Alfred. We're going to try and be real conservative of our time.
Right.
So I'll just lead off and then Malachi. Absolutely. Brother Alfred, just tell us with a brief summary, a little bit about your background and, more importantly, the assimilation of your background to America. How do you find your culture and how you've assimilated that in contemporary American culture?
Okay, so my name is Alfred Obiase. I was born in Monrovia, Liberia. Both my parents are Nigerian, so I was already migrated one generation removed from where I originally am from. So I lived there for about 6 years, moved to Brooklyn, New York in around 82. Right. So I would say in terms of my culture and assimilating Nigerian culture to American culture, it didn't really happen until later on when I got older, because initially when I got here, it's very insular. You're with your family. Right. And then when I got to school, a majority of my friends were first-generation immigrants. Right. So, like, my core competency was my first-generation Jamaican, first-generation Guyanese, first-generation, like, Peruvian. So we all had a very common background and very common upbringing in that what was championed was education, knowledge, progression, just being your best self or being your better self. Right. So like I said, in terms of just American culture, I would say the hugest disparity would be how my parents were very stringent in terms of growing up, and you're watching your friends go out and play and have a good time. It's like, well, why can't I do those things? Like, well, you're not from here. Right. And I'm like, but you brought me here. So like, it's that struggle between finding where you are versus where you're from, what's gonna work, what's not gonna work, what's the best attributes to pick up. So I think in terms of what America brought from my growth and development is just being who you are, not necessarily being married to a particular archetype as it relates to even education. You don't have to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. There are other aspirations, there are other avenues, and I think that's a huge thing that American culture promotes. Be who you are, not necessarily pave your own road, essentially. So I think that's the beauty of being both. You have that discipline of pursuing what you want to do, but at the same time, being who you want to be.
Right.
All right, so my question is not really for anyone specific. Anyone can answer on the panel, because I think every culture kind of deals with this. But I want to talk about colorism and which is a little different than racism. Racism is usually someone in power that can affect you or change your job setting or assimilate you into an area. Colorism is more kind of what you deal with amongst your own culture. So I'm pretty sure that everyone's had this experience, whether you're African American, Jamaican, Cuban. And I just basically wanted to ask you guys, have you noticed that a lot of the time our own people are a lot harder on us than people on the outside? So you think about the Willie Lynch syndrome, and you think about how it was, designed to put the light-skinned slave against the dark-skinned slave, the young slave against the older slave. And these are some of the problems that me being 25 here in New York, I see all the time. I see flyers and memes on Facebook talking about, oh, light-skinned this or dark-skinned this, and talking down on the darker-skinned person. I see the disconnect amongst the generations. You look on the news, you're seeing young kids punching older women, and, it's just a real disconnect. And when I think about, certain things that we go through with the colorism, I'm pretty sure, anybody on the panel could kind of speak up to that. So anybody that wants to take that, please feel free.
I'm just going to mention really quickly, me being light-skinned, I always had an issue with, I always had to prove how black I was. Let me just say that. And as a result of that, growing up, I fought a lot.
Right.
And I was, I was very smart. But I knew the street.
Right.
And my father was a cop for 32 years. He was in World War II. I was the last of the Mohicans that came out of the family. Right. And I was a fighter. And I was driven also. I always had to prove, because it was like, Lisa Ray's here. And I wanted to be around, I felt more comfortable around my black family. Mm-hmm. When I went around my Puerto Rican family, sometimes it was a little awkward because, some of them were very, very fair, and my hair is a little mixed and my lips are a little fuller. So, you experience prejudice. As Gigi said, you're experiencing that in your own culture.
Absolutely.
And then as a result, you have a complex.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I'm around my black folks, and they're like looking at me like, oh, she's light skinned, or she's gonna get better privileges, or even being in financial services for so long. Right. Guess what? It was harder for me because they didn't quite know what I was. So sometimes they would say things that were off, and I'd be like, hold on, that's off, and kind of call them on it. So that whole light skin, dark skin thing, and then your family, it looks different.
Right.
We embrace everything. So even my son growing up, they were calling him white boy. I said they called me white girl, but I would fight because
me too.
I'm about to show you how black I am, and that's just the truth about it.
Right.
So with my son, I told him about his whole background.
Right.
And I said we grew up on rice and beans and collard greens. Embrace it all. So we identify with the food, and I know all of you guys can do the same. So that is ridiculous. Yeah. That whole thing that you just said.
Nah, it's sad, and like you said, it's not even just within your culture; it's within your actual family. And I could definitely relate to that. You know the term moreno in Spanish, talking about the darker skinned people, and it's very disheartening to think that within your own family we share the same bloodline, that there's prejudice and colorism that goes on there. So I'm definitely with you on that one.
Alfred, how did you experience any of that once you came here? You coming from Nigeria and having your Nigeria, right? Mm-hmm. Your family having tradition and value and instilling values in you. You wanting to just be a regular kid. Mm-hmm. How did you balance that out?
So, in terms of like the whole complexion thing, it was funny because I was but I went to school in the 80s and 90s. So 80s and 90s, I'll be sure, Christopher Williams, the quote-unquote attractive guy, light-skinned curly hair, that's what it was. So I'm watching all my light-skinned friends do what they got to do, and I'm just like, wait a minute. Like, what's so different about me that I'm not having the same, response as it relates to ladies? So it wasn't until I got to college that I started noticing like a shift in terms of dark-skinned guys started becoming more aesthetically acceptable, if that's to even say that is crazy. But for the most part, that's kind of what happened. So again, initially I was thinking about the question. I'm like, this really didn't affect me as an African until I got to America.
But then let me ask you this then. So one of the things I think that comes directly off Malachi's question, and I want to throw this to I want to throw it to Gigi first and then come to you, Alfred. How did you deal with the preconceived notions of American society at large, with them thinking, okay, if you're Cuban, you should be dark-skinned, versus you shouldn't have this complexion, running into people's preconceived ideas of what you should look like, sound like, act like, versus who you really were. How did you deal with that? Was that an adjustment?
It was an adjustment because, I'm not that far. I'm right in between. If I go to the beach, I can turn as chocolate as this table. So either way, let's say I go to Cuba, I come back, I'm chocolate, because I would deliberately lay there so that I can get nice and dark and bronze. So I would come back home, and in America, they'll look at me totally different just because of a tan. You look dark. And what, am I different now? It's still the same person inside, the same person that worked there, the same person that puts needles in you, and in the hospital. So why are you asking me about my complexion?
Right.
Is it that serious?
Right. And you know what? And I'll take that
Only in America.
I'll take that from the color as well, and then go to, I guess, norms and cultural norms. Again, America, I think, has been predisposed to seeing imagery of what they think of the rest of the world's cultures. So when they think, for example, maybe Haiti, they think young child running around naked, half naked. They don't expect you to be cultured and speak multiple languages and so on. Jemima, was that an adjustment? Did you see the shock when you interacted with broader-based Americans here when they met you and you were different from what their expectations were?
Well, what happened with me, I think it was more Caucasian people thought I was different. So they would say, you're not like the others. And that was supposed to be like a compliment.
Right.
But I actually never had a problem being black. So when I hear, no, I really didn't. I embrace it. I love it. And I also know, coming from Haiti, the history of us as far as, European background, African background, and so on and so forth. But I think it was more like, because I didn't speak the language. So although a lot of people, when I was teased because I think, one, I was from another country, two, I didn't speak English, three, the culture, the way we dressed or whatever was different. So that was it. So you would have it didn't really matter. Children bothered you just because you were different from them. Right. So I was bothered by Asians, whites, blacks, by everybody. Right. But I always had this teacher instinct in me where I'm gonna teach you who I am, about who I am. So I had to fight, but I didn't like fighting because I was a girly girl, so. I didn't. So my sister did the fighting. I did sort of my fighting was more to educate. Right. I was always speaking. I talk a lot.
And stay on that, because I wanted to ask you, with the Dominican Republic being in such close proximity to Haiti, can you talk about some of the differences there with the cultures? And I know there's a lot of strain between the two cultures.
Yeah, there's a lot of strain, because one of the things is that Haitian people embrace the African heritage. And unfortunately, I cannot speak for all Dominican people, but that really was the conflict. A lot of times, even like I said, my grandfather is Cuban, and he was dark as this table. Right. But I don't know how. Right. Yeah. I don't know how Gigi feels, but what I found in the Dominican culture, although we are one country now, keep in mind it's one country, but it was basically, Haitian was viewed as dark, and they would say pelo malo, and for us who know who, you have Puerto Rican and Cuban here, pelo malo is bad hair. So at a very young age, I knew that I had good hair. I didn't, I knew, so the problem was I think that was always the problem between Dominican and Haitian. It was like the Dominicans you would see, they always portray them as lighter skin. Even Cuban as lighter skin. You didn't really see brown skin or dark skin Dominican people or Cuban people. If you go to Dominican Republic now, most of the people you see in the hotels, they look like me. You know, because we are one, but that really was a conflict.
Okay. Alfred, you want to comment on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, when I got here, I'm coming from Africa, so everybody expected me to be dark, but they didn't expect me to be civilized, which is kind of crazy.
Right, exactly.
So you're talking about early 80s where wherever you're getting your definition for what it's supposed to be like is probably a very finite media source. Right. So it's like, well, you speak English? I'm like, yeah, I've been speaking English. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's the first language. That's the first language. Everything else.
Like when you want to, like the young lady in Wakanda, when I want to.
Yeah, like everything else is a dialect. But for the most part, colonialism touched all parts of the world. So everyone kind of spoke the Queen's English. Right. So they were shocked that I spoke it, and then I spoke it, I guess, well or differently than with an African American dialect. So it was just kind of always that, having to explain to people that I didn't grow up in a mud hut. My house was crazier over there. Like, it was crazy over there. So it was just one of those things where we came for, like I said, we came in '82, and right before we left, there was about a civil war broke out in Liberia. So my parents had the wherewithal to get out before it got crazy. Right. But it wasn't because, like, we were being chased by anything. It's a very extremely civilized. It's not Wakanda, but it's very civilized. It's no different than any place else. It's just that when Tarzan is your experience,
right,
that's going to be the first thing that you ask somebody that had a pet monkey. And it's just very, like, ignorant kind of comments.
Totally. And speaking of Wakanda, I just want to, I don't know if you guys saw Black Panther. If you didn't, you should. You have to. So, and Chadwick Boseman, as well as Danai Gurira and Lupita Nyong'o, brought out that they were really pleased that they brought out how much wealth was in Africa. Because, again, like you said, people assume, you lived in a hut, you know, and Africa is huge. And I can't even, imagine, and that's one of the places I wanted to go. I want to go with my son now that he's older, now that he's a man, because I think that he would appreciate it more. But showing the wealth, showing the future, if you will, and the technology, and everything was virtual, and just that they were smart people, that they were educated people, and that they were running things there. And I was loving it, and plus they could fight. The women could fight. Yeah. So I was like loving that.
Can I piggyback off of that? I was actually talking to somebody earlier today. I was telling them that growing up in school, they always painted a picture of Egypt as if it was its own continent. Right. A lot of children aren't aware that Egypt is in Africa. Right. And I actually asked a child the other day, I said, do you know where Egypt is? And they didn't. Nope. And I wasn't surprised because I remember being taught separately. You would learn about Africa, and then Egypt was a whole other entity. And I think that it's part of like what you said, when you display something and people see, we were pharaohs and royalty, it makes you feel like you could be something. But when you see the depictions of slaves and you see the commercials about Africa and it's a kid with flies on his face, you don't know the wealth, you don't know about the King of Mali, Mansa Musa, who was one of the wealthiest men ever. So I definitely agree with you on that, Lisa.
It's the same thing, Casablanca. More people associate Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart than understanding that Casablanca is in Africa.
Right, in absolutely.
And to your point then, and I'm going to start this side from Alfred going across. If you can, give us one word or maybe just a short phrase that you think is probably the most misunderstood concept that wider America has of people who have these kinds of diverse backgrounds.
Word phrase,
couple of lines.
I mean, I think, and it's almost a double-edged sword in that the more we try to explain to people that we're the same, the more we highlight our individuality, which kind of makes it more of a, pitting people against each other. And for the most part, whether you're Haitian, African, Dominican, white, black, Caucasian, I don't care. Everybody has the same aspiration. Everybody wants the same thing. Right. There really is no difference, but because you're born into a society that paints one better than the other, you're kind of always having to strive and prove yourself to be equitable or better than, and it's easy to get caught up in, I'm better than you because I'm richer, darker, from here, from there. Right. So I think everyone kind of needs to accept the fact that they're individual, but that individuality comes from being part of a whole.
Right, absolutely.
And and on that note, it's important that we embrace who we are and what One World stands for. And one of the things that I share with people when I meet them is that, we embrace each other's cultures and understanding that as much as we're different, we really are the same. We all want the same things. Like Brother Alfred said, we want the same things. So embrace who you are. Let's share those experiences. Let's share those traditions. Let's share the food, because the food is banging.
Always.
Let's do that because, we're greater when we come together. And that's what One World Fest is all about.
Right. Absolutely. Malachi, same thing. Same question. One short phrase or a couple of words. What do you think is the most misunderstood conception that others have of someone like yourself with such a diverse background?
That we're lazy. I think one of the biggest things that I've heard in my community growing up, in the middle class neighborhood in Queens, that you guys are lazy. You don't want to work. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. And I don't think that they realize that there's not an equal opportunity as far as education and things of that nature. I was blessed enough to get a full scholarship to a high school in Long Island, in Brookville, which is actually the wealthiest town in America. So I saw both spectrums. I went to school in Brooklyn at Fort Greene, so I seen how there was a lack of textbooks, how the teachers was fearing for their life, so they're not focused on what they're teaching you, because I might get shot walking outside today. Then I experienced having an iPad in school. I experienced having small classrooms. So I think that lazy word is thrown around a lot with young African Americans, especially my generation. But I don't think people really look at the trauma that we have faced in history and the self-hatred that was put upon us that it's hard to shake.
Right.
Years of being told that you're, a nigger or you're this, you're that, and you're not good enough, and you got to drink from a separate water fountain. It kind of puts you on a whole different head. So I think, a little more acknowledgement needs to happen with that.
Right.
Just to add to that point, I think a huge difference between being African and being African American is that social historical stigma. Because I think it's from an immigrant standpoint, when you get here, you're essentially here for opportunity. Then you look and you start looking at African Americans going, well, why can't you do what I do in the same time frame that I did it in? You don't have the same social stigma that comes with slavery, literally being told and ingrained into that you're somehow less.
Right.
And it's a huge component of why people even choose to pursue anything versus not pursue anything at all.
Right. You're absolutely right. Jamima, same question. Something that you feel is a misperception of that others, wider America has, of someone like yourself from Haiti with the kind of background that you have. What do they look at you and think they know about you, but they're actually wrong about?
I've had the stigma of poverty. Oh, a third world country, the poorest country, and that stigma, and that's really what I know I and other Haitians have dealt with. I'm not saying that there is not poverty, but there's poverty in so many other places, but it's always like, oh, poor Haiti, that type of thing. So, yeah.
Gigi, same thing? What misperceptions do people have of a young woman of your background that they really don't know, that they're really wrong about?
Misconception is that I'm not going to go for the highest education, that I'm uneducated, I can't get ahead in life, things like that. And I hear it right at the job sometimes. I'll get someone that looks at me like, oh, you're a nurse, and oh, I have a daughter that's a doctor. You get it, like they're trying to tell me like you're a nurse, but no, I have a doctor in my family. And I always go, why are you comparing me to someone in your family? In my head I think it, and I go, oh, well, that's great that you have a professional in your family. I'm there too. So we have to stop putting each other against each other within our own culture.
Absolutely. Yeah. And ignorance breeds fear. And God has not given us a spirit of fear.
That's
but
right.
He's given us a spirit of power of love and a sound mind.
That's right.
And I just want to touch on that also. I still have issues. I know people look at me and they're sizing me up. And that annoys me. It's like I gotta go extra. You know, those who know me because they know my heart. And that's what I want you to see who I am. The person this is the person in my heart. You know, it's not about this.
The show.
It's not about this.
Right.
And honestly, I was self-conscious for so many years. You know, when I was younger, if I showed you a picture of me, you know, I modeled, I sang, I did all this stuff, but I always felt fat. But that's because people made me feel that way. I didn't realize until a couple of years ago, I was like, wait a minute, I wasn't fat. They would listen, if I knew who I was back then and wasn't so self-conscious fighting that or feeling uncomfortable or trying to prove, you know, no, I'm a good person or whatever, they'd have been like, Beyonce, who? Trust me. Right? But, you know, it's okay. Everything happens for a reason. And I love all my people. I love everything that comes with me. You know, we had our first family reunion in 2016 that I was unable to attend, but I met so many of my family in between because my mom was sick at that time. But, you know, my great-great-grandmother was on a plantation, you know. I mean, this is what it is. You know, there was the town that my father grew up in, a lot of them were roads. The mayor was Rhodes, white man. You know, it's crazy that you go back and you see people. So my cousin is going, hey, cuz, to the mayor. White, red, you know, white, really white. I'm just saying. So, anyway.
And so, you know, and that's really a touching and very true thing, Lisa. Let me ask each of you again, and we're going to start from Gigi's end.
And bring it down.
Tell us something that's incredibly amazing and wonderful and beautiful about your cultural background.
Yes.
And I want each person to touch on one. We only have a short time left, about 5-6 minutes. We don't want to cover everybody. But tell us something that's just really so beautiful.
Well, I'm happy to be bringing a little bit of awareness to, as they call us now, Afro-Cuban people, because I was always told that, oh, you don't look Cuban, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just happy to be bringing awareness to us that we are Black. I am a Black woman that speaks Spanish, and I'm glad that more of us are more natural now. You know, we're bringing our nappiness out. I'm very happy about that. I can be myself.
That's right. That's great. That's great. Jemima?
I know.
What's something so fantastic about Haitian culture, the food? Just tell us what's so amazing.
I think that, yes, the food is delicious.
That's true.
We are very hardworking people. I'm very proud because in the 70s, I think people were not so proud to say they were from Haiti. Mm-hmm. So I'm proud that people are proud now of recognizing where they're from, and then they are embracing it, wherever you're from. But I'm very proud of the Haitian community because now they're no longer afraid of saying that they are Haitian, because you should have never been afraid in the first place.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Malachi?
For me, I'm gonna just say with our resilience, African Americans, taking negative situations and turning it into something positive, whether it be hip hop, rebelting, talking about your social situation, whether it be the 1920s, the Harlem Renaissance. I think that resilience is something that we've always displayed.
Right. That's amazing. Alfred?
I would say Nigerian arrogance. And what I mean by that is my mom always kind of tells me something like, you're not better than anybody and nobody's better than you. Right. So essentially what that means is you can do whatever you want, but always keep in mind that there is no like better than, worse than. So you have that mindset. You're not looking at anybody like I can't achieve that or I wish I can. It's just a question of what do you want to do.
Right.
So it takes a certain level of arrogance to pursue whatever you want to do without going, am I good enough? Do I have enough resources? Right. Just go ahead. So I think if everyone kind of pursued anything they wanted with just a level of I can do it if I feel like it,
right,
you'd be a lot better off.
Right, absolutely. Lisa?
I agree with what Alfred just said. And I just, as far as embracing who you are and what that comes with, I love every part, again, what I was saying of who I am. So the food, listen, rice and beans and collard greens, that's what I grew up on. I could cook, yep. Yeah. So a big misconception is that, if you look like me, you can't cook. You wrong. I love to eat, so I
Not
can
true.
cook. Right. So embrace who you are. Share it with people once again, and Black, Puerto Rican, West Indian, and that's another thing. It's like again, people see you and look at you and like, so what are you? What difference does it make?
Right.
What difference does it make?
Right.
It's love,
Right.
love. Just share love.
And over and above everything, and everything that everybody has said really points to what we're all about. One World is really all about this. Learning everybody else's culture. Learn what you don't know.
That's right.
Get to understand what you may have feared, because again, that ignorance breeds fear. But once you get to understand that what connects us is a lot more than what separates us, then you begin to get an understanding and appreciation and love, as you said, for your fellow human being. And that's what One World was founded on. Those are the principles, those are the mandates. Wondering and just getting together to learn more about each other and celebrating each other's culture. And with that, I want to throw it back to our amazing guest host for the day, Malachi, a young man of many talents and a great diverse background. Malachi, you want to leave us with some closing knowledge?
Before you do that, tell them a little bit about yourself, because I don't think we really got into who you were and what you do with the Cana Foundation.
Okay, first and foremost, my name is Malachi Davis. I'm 25 years old, and I work for the Cana Foundation, which is a foundation that kind of helps Native and Indigenous groups. We call it rewilding, and it's basically rehoming them and reintroducing them to the culture that they lost when their land was colonized and taken from them. We also rehome wild horses, and that's pretty much what I do. I do a lot of blog writing. I have my own podcast show called The Cana Project. That's really, all that's going on with me. Loving father. That's
Absolutely.
the
Let
new
everybody
thing.
know where they can get in contact with you.
You could actually reach me on my email, which is mallymal, MALYMAL 329@gmail.com. You could go to www.canafoundation.org, see some of my blog writing. That's pretty much it.
Okay, we got about 2 more minutes. Let's start with Gigi. We're going to sign off. You want to share any information about where people can find you, or?
You can follow me on Instagram at GG1000. That's about it.
Okay.
I'm working on a website now.
Jamaica.
Yeah, I'm from Hunter College, Human Resources. So I just wanted to say One World Fest. I would like for everybody to log into that website and support One World Fest.
Yes.
And thank you to all my friends at Hunter College HR for listening in and supporting me.
Okay, Alfred.
You can find me on onetrackmind.com. I'm a writer, producer, author. So at Crazed African on Instagram and Twitter.
And show us the book. Just show us the cover.
Yeah, please.
It's the book, You Made It a Hotline, the most influential lines in hip-hop. So basically it talks about hip-hop lines, why it's relevant to the culture, the social topics, and things of that nature. It's a pretty good read, but I'm biased.
Sounds good. Okay, and I'm definitely down with One World Fest. And just to let you know, I have a book actually coming out too, very soon, and I'm working on a blog. I was recently diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I'm sharing how to empower people with stories of what I go through and what I go through on a regular basis, and just so they can be encouraged.
And so, everybody, thank you again for tuning in. It's been an amazing show. Certainly one of those that we all feel like we need a lot more time for. Just as we're getting familiar and comfortable with each other, it's really time to dig down more. And unfortunately, we're out of time. But certainly log on to the website, oneworldfest.org.
OneWorldFest.global.
Global.
OneWorldFest.global. That's our website. And This is Radio One World Fest. Hashtag Get to Know One World. Hashtag You Have a Voice. Log in to OneWorldFest.global. Let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll make sure that we touch on it. Thank everybody for being our guests.
Thank you
for having
us.
us.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you to the Cafeteria
Thank you.
and our
Tune in again.
CEO and founder, Kamel Ellis.
And tune in again the last Sunday, third Sunday of every month, when we'll be bringing you another wonderful show. Last Sunday of every month. Thank you again for tuning in. This is One World Fest and One World.
Radio One World Fest.
Peace, y'all.
All right,
Everybody's
y'all.
tongue-tied.
Peace.
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 Throw up the one. Throw your ones up.